On this day, she was taken to the hospital for emergency dialysis. But because of her condition, she was no closer to getting on the kidney transplant list.
This feels so. This is not where I want it to be.
Nick Lyon faces involuntary manslaughter charges in connection with the death of two men in the Flint Legionnaires outbreak.
That summer, 11 months of pretrial testimony was coming to an end in the case against Nick Lyon. With a long-awaited ruling on whether the evidence was strong enough to send his case to trial.
You have a member of the governor's cabinet who is still on the job as the top health official in the state of Michigan on trial for poisoning people.
Prosecution has charged Mr. Lyon with involuntary manslaughter
I think maybe that is unprecedented.
based upon all of the evidence in its totality. The prosecution has established that the following crimes have been committed, and probable cause exists to believe that Nicholas Lyon has committed these offenses.
The judge ordered Lyon to stand trial. Another judge would order the same for Eaton Wells. Both appealed the decisions, delaying the start of any trials. And while the appeals were dragging on,
changing political landscape for our state.
Biggest midterm election in a generation.
the political landscape in Michigan was changing with a new governor.
It was a dominating night for Democrats, winning a number of key races, including governor, attorney general.
And a new attorney general, a Democrat who criticized the investigation for not producing results.
I think we have to take a very close look at those investigations. We have to reevaluate, and I think we should have career prosecutors handling those cases.
By the beginning of 2019, the fate of the investigation was uncertain. With the criminal cases in limbo, we were still trying to determine the toll of the Legionnaires' outbreak.
It's kind of like detective work. You look at the evidence, you evaluate the circumstances, and then you start putting these pieces together.
After months of reporting and analysis, Frontline had documented 115 pneumonia deaths that happened in Flint during the outbreak. In response to our findings, a spokeswoman for the state health department told us they'd noticed an increase too, and concluded it was due to influenza.
One is standing
But
still,
independent
falling asleep.
scientists were telling us that in all likelihood, some of them were actually due to Legionnaires.
I took the information from the death certificates and I plotted out each one of those deaths on a map just to kind of see if anything stood out. And in fact, it did. In particular, the older parts of the city, we found these clusters of people that around the same time frames the switch were dying of pneumonia and dying of Legionnaire's disease. They're in Mock Park.
Mock Park is a neighborhood on the west side of Flint where we found 6 deaths attributed to pneumonia in the beginning of the outbreak. Triple what it had been during that time the previous year.
Or did you guys ever think there was something wrong with the water?
No, I didn't know anything was wrong with the water.
Lori Moore lived here with her nephew, Marcus Wilson, during the summer of 2014, when Marcus was recovering from cancer treatments.
He was weak, but he wasn't weak. He was walking, he was doing everything on his own.
Did Marcus use the water here a lot? Did he?
Yes, he did. He drank a lot of water. He would take showers and he was sitting there for a long time and just let the water run in his face. And I was like, Marcus, you okay? And he was like, man, that water feels good. And he would always just sit in there and just, let the water hit him in his face. And,
He's sitting in there, hot water,
Yeah.
breathing it in right in his face.
Yes, he would just sit there in the chair and hold his face like this.
Back when the outbreak was erupting in August 2014, Marcus went to the hospital. Doctors diagnosed him with pneumonia, never testing for Legionnaires. A few weeks later, he was dead. Without testing, there was no way to know for certain if Marcus Wilson or any of the 115 people we found had died of Legionnaires. But what were the chances that some of them had?
I'm a beat reporter, I'm not an epidemiologist. You can talk to families, you can put dots on a map and make assumptions about clusters. But at the end of the day, you really do need an objective, independent review of that data.
So we took our reporting to Atlanta, to Emory University, where a team of independent epidemiologists we'd commissioned built their own statistical model to analyze the data we'd been collecting.
What a statistical model allows us to do is to really see the forest for the trees, to look at whether or not the difference that we saw in Genesee County was actually statistically meaningful.
The team compared the pneumonia deaths to a control group.
The control group that we chose for this analysis was counties that were similar to Genesee County in many respects in terms of their size and income and education level and socioeconomic profile, but were both in Michigan and in surrounding states. And so what we see here is that when we start in 2011, we follow this mortality rate. They're pretty similar between Genesee County and the controls, and they're pretty similar, they're quite similar, and this continues until we get to about the middle of 2014. And this is sort of where the inflection point happens here.
The increase was most pronounced in the first 6 months of 2014, and less so in 2015. It's not clear why, since Flint was still on river water then.
Right when the Legionnaires epidemic starts, the pneumonia death rate in Genesee goes up, while in the other counties it's going down. So we got this very clear divergence when you plot that over time.
After running the numbers, the team concluded there'd been about 70 more pneumonia deaths than normal.
That means that there could have been a little bit more than 70 and there could have been fewer. However, the most plausible number that we came up with from our models is 70.
This is definitely consistent with the idea that there were some Legionnaires cases that did not get diagnosed and therefore did not get included in the official count for the outbreak. It's likely that the Legionnaires outbreak was bigger than that reported by official authorities.
If physicians had a higher level of awareness about the Legionnaire's disease outbreak earlier than they did, it's possible that that could have ultimately led to fewer cases and fewer deaths due to Legionnaires.
We presented our findings and Emory's to former Governor Rick Snyder, who declined to comment. The State Health Department also declined, citing pending litigation. The official death toll from the outbreak remains 12 people.
The Lord is your keeper. The sun shall not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. Amen.
Looking further into our data, we made another discovery. Of the people who were diagnosed with Legionnaires during the outbreak and initially survived, at least 20 had since died.
Death Dee McBride departed this life on February 12, 2019 at St. Mary's Mercy Hospital.
In the end, Jasmine McBride couldn't overcome the damage that had been done by the Legionnaire's disease.
What was the cause of her death were complications as a result of Legionnaire's disease. She had heart problems, she had lung problems, she had kidney problems, and that resulted in her having a cardiac arrest.
If she could get out right now, she would say, I'm not suffering anymore from Legionnaire's disease. I'm not suffering. I even get a transplant. Thank God I'm free. Thank you, free.
She fought a good fight. She finished her course. And the victory is hers. She was angry and she forgave them. She just wants justice to be served.
A big
story we are following tonight, outrage in the city of Flint,
People of
Michigan.
Flint, Michigan say they are
The
horrified
shocking
again.
decision from the newly Democratic Attorney General's office.
4 months later,
I'm really angry. We want to see some justice. We want justice.
Michigan's new Attorney General had ousted Todd Flood and most of his team and appointed new prosecutors who dropped all the charges against Nick Lyon, Dr. Eden Wells, and the other officials.
When we first came into the investigation, we had some very real concerns, major concerns. And when I looked at it, I thought, well, I think I made it told the Attorney General, we're going to start from the beginning. We're going to start from scratch.
Despite 2 judges ruling the cases should go to trial, the new prosecutors say the previous investigation was fundamentally flawed and failed to collect all available evidence.
If we know that investigation was not complete, you just simply cannot proceed. It's very important when we say we drop the charges is that these charges are dismissed without prejudice, which means these charges could be brought up again today.
We're supposed to have everything, look at it, make a decision. That's not the way things happened in this case. Millions and millions of dollars have been spent on the Flint water investigation. They wasted 3 years for zero, for nothing.
Here's the thing. I know we worked tirelessly to put a great case together and continue the investigation. I know that, right? And I can say that without equivocation. And candidly, look, the facts speak for themselves. We won. We got the cases bound over. We did things the old-fashioned way of moving from the bottom and going up in the investigation. And the investigation for us was far from over.
More than 5 years after the start of the outbreak, it remains to be seen whether any of the officials at the center of the Flint water crisis will be held responsible.
Flint happened. People have to live with this for years and years and years and years and years to come. We are interested in justice, no matter how hard that is. We did not choose the easy route, but we chose the route that the people of Flint deserve.
I'm more than skeptical. It makes no sense to drop the charges, dismiss the investigation, to start from scratch with the clock ticking. I guess time will tell, but I suspect that justice delayed is going to be justice forgotten.
So in the end, nobody is, and actually later on, the governor does get charged as well. The first governor, the one that was governor. Now, it's funny because nobody, don't get me crazy again. No bungee jumping, no thinking you can fly. So I hope you were still able to concentrate somewhat on the video. Well, I'm not sure if you ever did in the first place. Nobody ever goes to jail for this that I'm aware of. The blame is shifted back and forth between that hospital. Sometimes they don't want to leave. They get really comfortable. He's taking his time leaving Derek's hand. And then you get ones like that it almost looked like, you know what a chicken fight is when you're in a pool? Yeah. It almost looked like the chickens were doing a chicken fight. But one was forwards and one was backwards, so when the one went walking, it was carrying the other one like that.
So they could attack from both sides.
Maybe they call it a human fight, I guess, I don't know. You ready? Most of you, I think, got them to go to sleep at least at some point, or many of you did.
Mine just went. I'm watching the mine's educated. It's
I can get some rest. It's dark in there.
And then you fell asleep like that.
I didn't warn you.
And you just woke up and you're lost up there. No, that shit.
Okay. So, I hope you enjoyed your time with the chickens because, they will be going by the end of the week for sure. So don't expect to be holding them another day. I'm not sure that that's going to happen. And look how tired they look. Two of them look like they just go face first into the bedding. And they're out. But the youngest one is doing okay because there was already one sitting in the food trying to lay its claim to it.
Yeah, I kind of like their money.
Shh, it's quiet day. Thank you.
You can bring those to the next classroom.
I'm gonna bring them like that.
Yeah.
And the other class pet, the worms are in there too.
Are they still alive?
Yes.
We've just forgotten about the worms.
Well, I haven't forgotten about them, but again, worms don't do a whole lot. We can shake food above the cage, but they're not gonna jump, even though some of you think they might. Any questions about the chickens or about the movie? Yes,
I have a question about the worms.
okay.
When was the last time you fed them?
Last week, because when I feed them something, they don't, like, they eat it so slowly. It's not that they eat slowly, but look at the size of their body. I had to reload this. Another one. I had to reload that because like, it sort of gets lower in some spots than others. But I came over to give them more food, and they like all freaked out and sort of running around the cage like I'm coming to kill all of them. Just beware of converted. Have your plan of attack ready if you come here. All right, any other questions? In the video, by the way, Flint's water, there will be some people in that city that will live there for the rest of their lives and probably never trust the water again. Think about the number of people that were sick. They were just talking about the number of deaths. And that independent study that was done, they came up with 70 deaths, extra deaths and that's just a guess. Like that, they're saying minimally, it had to be around 70. Like that's probably the best number. Not just cases, but people that died. So how many that died? No idea. 70 more deaths from Legionnaire's disease than were documented because there was more than 90 additional cases of pneumonia deaths during that year and a half, that first year and a half, until they switched the water supply back. But remember, even switching the water supply back didn't make the pipes clean. It just changed the water back to where they got the water from the city of Detroit. But there's still metal and things and bacteria in those pipes. So you better believe they're probably not testing that water for that stuff, which of course they should, but, or if it comes out or they're not gonna release those tests, which again, they should. That should be a Freedom of Information Act thing. But when the government or some members of the government wanna hide things, they will do it. Because it's not about the truth, it's about saving my own behind. About saving the state money and about saving my pension for life job. Because those people that usually work for a state or federal government, they get a pension for life, even if they're only in the job for 4 years. Everybody know what a pension is? They get money for their retirement for the rest of their life after they're out of that job, even if they get it for 4 years. That's crazy. I have to do my job for 35 years, and there's people that you know, like your parents, that might have to do even longer. I can't complain too much though, because I can retire at 58. Most people cannot do that anymore. See, the kids weren't so bad, were they? Oh, we got the poop on them? All right. I want the other kids to know you're there. I don't think that's gonna work, but we'll give it a shot. No. Hi, Parker. Hi. Happy quiet day.
Yeah, they are.
They're warm.
Are you right? No, they just told me.
They just said, I hope he brings them today.
We're just gonna do a lab. So I'm gonna tell her.
A lot of pooping.
Yeah.
See ya. Hey, Mom. How you doing? Honestly good. A little bit, got a little bit loud when they wanted to do the claps at the end of the gift kit. You know, but that's it. That was the only problem.
Kids have the claps?
You have them under there? Yes, he does.
No.
How are they breathing?
We're gonna do a lab today.
Yay!